The Marvel Cinematic Universe has become a worldwide sensation since it took over Hollywood with the release of Iron Man in 2008. With 19 Marvel movies already out there and a reported 13 more in development, it seems like this mega franchise is almost unstoppable. But even movies that are packed with stars and helmed by some of the biggest directors working today aren't safe from a few scenes getting left on the cutting room floor. If you enjoy this video, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the bell to be notified when we upload fresh content.
Alright, hey. Alright, good job, guys. Let's just not come in tomorrow.
Most consider Iron Man as the movie that started it all. The Robert Downey Jr. led sensation awakened fans and studios alike to the possibilities of what these movies could be. With barely any script, it was also almost entirely improvised, so it makes sense that not everything would end up in the final cut. For instance, one deleted scene shows Tony and Yinsen still held in captivity. To bide their time, they play a game of backgammon and spar for intellectual superiority. The conversation remained in the movie, but the backgammon game was removed, probably because it made their situation look a little too relaxed. Another Iron Man cut takes place before Tony reveals to the world that he is actually Iron Man. Because he needs to travel to the Middle East to save a village from terrorists, he plans an elaborate party in Dubai and makes his exit during the fireworks. This was cut for continuity, seeing as how the suit can fly. It makes the whole thing a classic Tony Stark move, but a little unnecessary. In the second Iron Man, we have an extended scene in which Pepper Potts spots Agent Phil Coulson during the Senate committee sequence. During Sam Rockwell's speech, first Tony and then Phil recommend the same hot dog place to Pepper, Ben's Chili Bowl. While a chili dog sounds delicious and it makes for a funny bit, we're guessing this was shortened for time. In Iron Man 3, we have a scene where Harley's bully EJ sees Tony at his worst and then snowmobiles away laughing. Later in a life-threatening situation, Tony goes out of his way to rescue EJ, further proving that he is a hero. Iron Man 3 was already over 2 hours long, and only essential scenes that drove the plot forward were kept in out of necessity. After Maya Hansen is shot, she crawls too close to a volatile Extremis plant in an attempt to forward vital information about Extremis to Tony before the plant explodes, taking her with it. While a selfless sacrifice, ultimately this scene proves unnecessary. Moving on to the Incredible Hulk. In an alternate opening scene, we see Bruce Banner high up in the snow-covered mountain range. Out of hope of ever freeing himself from the Hulk, he takes out a gun and attempts to end his life. Fortunately, the Hulk intervenes. It's assumed this scene was just too depressing for the opening of the film, as it was geared at families after all. Another one from the same film involves a scene where Bruce has to deliver some pizzas to a couple of different groups of college students. The first is a group of mathematicians, and the second involves a run-in with a couple of sorority girls, who give Bruce the chance to say his classic line. We're not sure why this one was cut, but it probably wouldn't have added much to the final film. When Thor opened in theaters, audiences couldn't get enough of the moment in which he throws down his coffee mug and shouts, "Another." While in this scene, we see him do almost the same thing. He smashes a wine glass into a fire and calls for another before we see Thor and Loki as adults for the first time, and they have a little back and forth. While it's a nice introduction, we get the same amount of context from the scene that was chosen for the final version. Later in the movie on Earth, when a building has been blown up and Selvig dangerously injured, Thor saves his life using Asgardian technology. It's a heartwarming scene that shows how noble Thor actually is, but ultimately probably didn't work in the movie's flow of action. Thor also had an alternate ending which attempted to wrap up the characters neatly. We see Selvig back in the lab, and there is a hint at his use of some sword data as well as S.H.I.E.L.D.'s records. We also see Jane and Darcy start up a beacon that they hope will help Thor find them again. While S.W.O.R.D. would have thrilled hardcore comic fans, the ending they chose does a better job at setting up Thor 2, which was definitely a priority for the studio. In Thor: The Dark World, a scene was cut that showed Thor's mother talking to Loki, and a following conversation in which she expresses compassion for her wayward son as any mother would. She loves him despite his evil behavior, and it's a beautiful scene for both of them. It's a bit mysterious as to why this one was cut. It would have added some nice character dimension to both of them. This scene is one that's pretty much identical to the one that made it into the film, except instead of Loki actually turning into Captain America, giving Chris Evans a pretty awesome cameo, he simply takes on the outfit, S.H.I.E.L.D. included, and tries his hand at an American accent. It definitely made sense for Chris Evans to end up in the final cut, but seeing Loki in the Captain's costume is pretty fun. The most recent and most beloved of the Thor movies was Thor Ragnarok, directed by Taika Waititi. In this deleted scene, Grandmaster sends Loki and Valkyrie to find Thor and the Hulk by waving them away with his hand. When they don't understand, a hilarious exchange between Grandmaster and Topaz about universal hand gestures follow. While it was probably cut for time, it is worth watching in its entirety. On their way to Asgard, Thor and Bruce Banner talk about the deaths of their fathers, over a bowl of what Bruce believes to be noodles. Thor laments about the loss of his hammer, which leads Bruce to compare the God of Thunder with the elephant Dumbo. Thor, of course, misunderstands, and it turns out that Bruce has been eating the very long tail of an extremely unappealing bug creature. Again, cut for time, but it is a scene that is beyond worth watching. In Captain America: The First Avenger, a scene was cut in which Steve Rogers decides that he has retired from the press circuit and has a medal given to him by Colonel Phillips, while Howard Stark shows some hesitance to believe the captain about the Hydra explosive. All in all, the pace of the film was probably better off without this scene, and there was enough existing content to make up for it. In another scene, Steve is seen watching a documentary about himself, looking up at his old friends, and goes to visit a cafe in which he meets the waitress he will later save. While it would have made their future scene together more impactful and did include a Stan Lee cameo, like most of the other scenes, it was cut for time. In Captain America: The Winter Soldier, a scene was cut that showed S.H.I.E.L.D. turning on the captain. They think, because of a tracker placed in his suit, that they have found him, but it turns out he had already rid himself of the uniform and is nowhere near it. While a nice victory for Steve Rogers, this scene didn't do much to push the story forward. The first Avengers film included quite a lot of deleted scenes, as it's rumored that Joss Whedon's first cut was over 3 hours long. In this one, we actually have two small Loki bits in one that ended up on the cutting room floor. Firstly is Loki communicating with the other and forming their evil plot, and the second part reveals that Loki has forgotten the scepter. When you have to cut over an hour from your movie, difficult choices have to be made.
Well, he's definitely unhappy. I'm gonna try and keep him that way.
In Avengers Age of Ultron, an extended version of Thor's dreamlike vision exists, in which, according to Joss Whedon, we see Loki doing an impression of Odin, as well as Thor entering the Pond of Destiny in search of answers. He then becomes possessed by a character known as Mourn. Whedon said that the reason it was cut is because the scene was not favored by the executives behind the film. Another cut from Age of Ultron apparently involved Quicksilver, according to Joss Whedon. Apparently it revolved around Quicksilver actually surviving the gunfire that did him in the end. They also originally shot a version of the ending with Quicksilver in it, proving that he did survive. They didn't end up using it, however, because Whedon found it unrealistic to make a film about a war with no casualties, no price to pay.
That dude there, I need his prosthetic leg.
His leg?
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy is similar to Deadpool in that the movie feels a little bit like a world of its own. It shook up the MCU a little upon its release. One thing that's missing, however, is more shared screen time between Gamora and Nebula, though that wasn't always the case. This deleted scene has the two sisters confront one another, discuss their family, and do a little fighting. Like most deleted Marvel scenes, it seems like this one was sacrificed for a 2-hour runtime. This short deleted scene between John C Reilly's Roman Day and Peter Serafinovich's Denarian Saul was another moment of comedy in an already hilarious film. Day can't get his clothing to light up properly, and the two figure out where to send the Guardians. While it is funny, the overall edit doesn't suffer the loss of this scene.
Let's go!
Black Panther only had a couple of scenes that didn't make it to the final cut. In this one, T'Challa recalls when T'Chaka gave him the title of Black Panther while he was still king. Zuri tells him that the reason is because T'Chaka had become too fat to wear the suit. While it's a great moment between the two, it didn't really help in moving the story forward. Before T'Challa has to make his address to the United Nations, he meets Everett Ross. Everett asks T'Challa not to reveal the true wealth and power of Wakanda to the world, and T'Challa tells him that he won't allow fear to guide him anymore. Ross relents and attempts to wish T'Challa good luck in Wakandan, but accidentally wishes him good luck and many shoelaces instead.
Hey, could you hold this for a second? Thanks. Hey, is this anybody's bike?
In Spiderman Homecoming, a scene with Marissa Tomei as Aunt May was left on the cutting room floor, in which Aunt May ended up saving a little girl who was in distress, leaving us to wonder if Aunt May imparted her senses of ethics and selflessness onto her nephew. It added dimension to their relationship, and Tomei has come out to say that she was quite disappointed this great scene didn't make it into the final film.
Dummy. Hi, dummy. How did you get that cap on your head?
Well, there they are. All of the best Marvel moments that never made it to the big screen. What did you think of these scenes? Should any of them been left in the final movies? Do you know any other amazing scenes that were cut? Let us know in the comments, and while you're down there, subscribe to Screen Rant for more great videos like this one. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you at the movies.